My parents spent $260,000 on my twin sister's future and told me I wasn't worth a single dollar. For years later, I stood on a graduation stage in front of 3,000 people, wearing a gold honor sash, while those same parents sat in the front row, completely unaware that the daughter they once called a bad investment was about to become the most unforgettable part of that day. But to understand that moment, you need to know what happened first. And before we begin, if you enjoy powerful stories like this, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss more stories like this. It all started on a warm Tuesday evening in April 2021. The acceptance letters had arrived that afternoon. My twin sister, Victoria, got into Whitmore University, one of the most prestigious private schools in the state. Tuition? $65,000 a year. I got into Eastbrook State, a public university with a much lower cost but still expensive enough to make my stomach twist. That night, Dad called a family meeting in the living room. I already knew what that meant. My father only used that tone when he was about to make a decision that nobody else was allowed to question. Victoria stood by the window, smiling like she had already won. Mom sat quietly on the couch, hands folded in her lap. I sat across from Dad, my acceptance letter still clutched in my hand. Dad cleared his throat. "Victoria," he said, "your mother and I have decided to pay for your full education. Tuition, room, board, everything." Victoria squealed. Mom smiled proudly. My heart sank, but I stayed quiet. Then Dad turned toward me. "Francis," he said flatly, "we will not be paying for your education." For a second, I honestly thought I heard him wrong.
What? Dad didn't blink.
"Victoria has potential. She knows how to build relationships. She stands out. Investing in her future makes sense." Then he looked me dead in the eye and said words I would never forget for the rest of my life. "You're smart, Francis, but you're not special. There's no return on investment with you." The room went silent. It felt like someone had punched me in the chest. I looked at Mom. She wouldn't meet my eyes. I looked at Victoria. She was already texting someone, probably sharing the good news. Nobody defended me. Nobody even looked uncomfortable. It was as if they had already agreed that this was normal. So, I whispered, my throat tight, "I'm just supposed to figure it out?" Dad shrugged. "You're resourceful. You'll manage." That was it. Just like that. One daughter got a future. The other got a shrug. That night, I sat alone in my bedroom staring at the cracked laptop they'd given me after Victoria got a brand new one. And suddenly, every memory hit me at once. Victoria's birthday parties, bigger than mine. Victoria's ski trips. Victoria's car at 16. Victoria's designer prom dress. And me? Hand-me-downs. Cheap gifts. Excuses. Forgotten moments. I wasn't imagining it. I had spent years telling myself maybe I was overthinking things. But now I knew the truth. My parents didn't see me as their daughter. They saw me as a waste of money. A bad investment. And that night, I made a decision. I wasn't going to beg for their love. I wasn't going to cry for their approval. I was going to build a life so big that one day they'd have no choice but to see exactly what they almost threw away. I opened my broken laptop at 2 a.m. and typed 6 words into the search bar. Full scholarships for independent students. I had no idea then that one click would change my entire life. And it would begin with a discovery that shocked even me. Before we continue, if you enjoy stories with shocking twists and emotional payback, make sure to subscribe for more. I barely slept that night. Dad's words kept replaying in my head. "There's no return on investment with you." Every time I closed my eyes, I heard it again. By morning, I wasn't crying anymore. I was angry. The kind of quiet anger that changes a person forever. At 6 a.m., while everyone else was asleep, I sat at my old desk with my cracked laptop and started searching. Scholarships, grants, work-study programs, financial aid loopholes, anything. For hours, I clicked through websites until my eyes burned. Most options were dead ends. Some required family income information, which meant my parents' money would count against me, even though they refused to help. Then I found something strange. A scholarship for students who demonstrated financial abandonment despite family means. I froze. I had never heard of that before. My heart started racing as I read the details. Students could apply if parents refused educational support and there was evidence of unequal treatment or written financial denial. Evidence. I thought back to the family meeting. Nothing had been recorded. No documents. No proof. And then, I remembered Dad. My father loved paperwork. He documented everything. Tax folders, budget spreadsheets, expense plans, investment charts. He treated family like a business. If there was a decision, there was probably a file. That afternoon, I waited until my parents left for dinner with Victoria. I knew exactly where Dad kept his office key. Inside a ceramic bowl in the kitchen. Same place for 10 years. My hands shook as I unlocked his office. The room smelled like leather and printer ink. Everything was perfectly organized. Labeled folders, locked drawers, color-coded binders. I searched for nearly 20 minutes before I found a black folder labeled Education Planning, Twins. My stomach dropped. Twins. Plural. I opened it, and what I saw made my blood run cold. 2 pages. One for Victoria. One for me. Victoria's page had numbers highlighted in blue. Private university tuition. Living expenses. Travel fund. Emergency spending. Networking budget. Total plan support. $260,000. My fingers trembled as I turned to my page. Mine had only one sentence, typed neatly in the center. Not recommended for long-term investment. Underneath it, Dad had written personal notes. Academically capable but socially average. Low strategic value. Can likely self-support. Resources better allocated elsewhere. I stopped breathing. This wasn't a heat-of-the-moment decision. This wasn't stress. This wasn't money problems. My father had literally evaluated me like a stock and decided I wasn't worth funding. Then I saw something even worse. At the bottom of the file, Mom's signature. Approved. I sat there staring at that page until my vision blurred. My mother hadn't stayed silent because she was afraid. She had agreed.
Completely.
Tears burned in my eyes, but I forced them back.
No.
Not now. Then something slipped from inside the folder. A yellow sticky note.
Handwritten.
Dad's handwriting.
It read,
"Do not show Francis this file." I laughed. Not because it was funny, because somehow that hurt more than everything else. They knew it was cruel. They just didn't care. I quickly took photos of every page with my phone. Then I put everything back exactly where I found it. That file became the first real proof that I wasn't crazy. That night, I submitted the scholarship application. I attached the evidence. And for the first time in my life, I told the truth.
about the favoritism.
About the financial rejection. About what it felt like to grow up as the daughter nobody chose. 3 weeks later, an email arrived. Subject line: Scholarship decision. My hands shook as I opened it. Then I read the first sentence and screamed so loud that Victoria came running into my room. I stared at the email, barely breathing. My hands were shaking so hard I almost dropped my phone. Victoria stood in my doorway, annoyed. "What are you screaming about?" I couldn't even answer. I just kept reading the words over and over. "Congratulations. You have been awarded a full academic scholarship, including tuition, housing, meal plan, books, and a living stipend." I covered my mouth. Tears poured down my face. Not because I was sad, because for the first time in my life, someone had looked at me and said, "You are worth investing in." Victoria snatched the phone from my hand. Her eyes scanned the email. Her smile disappeared. "What?" she snapped. "How did you get that?" I took my phone back. I applied.
That was all I said.
But inside, something had changed. For once, I didn't feel small. That evening, my parents found out. Dad reread the email twice. Mom looked stunned. Victoria folded her arms. Dad finally cleared his throat. "Well, that's good. That's good." That was it. No congratulations. No hug. No pride. Just the same cold voice he used when discussing taxes. Then Dad said something that made my stomach twist. "So now this actually works out better financially."
I stared at him. What?
He leaned back in his chair. With your scholarship, we can shift more support toward Victoria's needs. I almost laughed. Even now, even after I earned this on my own, my success was somehow still about helping Victoria. Mom nodded. It makes things easier for everyone. Everyone. Except me. That night, I packed quietly.
Clothes. Books.
Old notebooks. Everything I actually cared about. No one noticed. Or maybe they just didn't care enough to ask. 2 weeks later, I moved into Eastbrook State. My dorm room was tiny. The mattress was awful. The bathroom was shared with 6 strangers. And it was the happiest I had ever been. Because for the first time in my life, I was somewhere I didn't feel invisible. College wasn't easy. I worked harder than I ever had. Classes during the day. Campus tutoring job at night. Study sessions until 2 a.m. While other students partied. I built.
Slowly.
Quietly. Relentlessly. By sophomore year, professors knew my name. By junior year, I was leading research projects. By senior year, I was at the top of my department. Meanwhile, Victoria's life looked very different. At first, everything seemed perfect. Luxury dorm, designer clothes, vacation photos, expensive parties. My parents funded all of it. Every cent. Social media made her life look glamorous.
Perfect.
Untouchable. But pictures don't show everything. Then one night, I got a phone call from Mom. Her voice sounded strange.
Tight. Panicked.
Francis, she said, we need to talk about your sister. That was the first time in years my mother had called me first. Before we continue, if you enjoy powerful stories like this, make sure to subscribe. I stared at my phone in silence. For a second, I thought maybe I heard Mom wrong. She never called me first. Not on birthdays. Not after finals. Not even when I made Dean's List 3 years in a row.
But now?
Now she needed something. I answered carefully. What happened? Mom let out a shaky breath. It's Victoria. My stomach tightened. What about her? There was silence on the line. Then Mom whispered. She got expelled. I sat straight up in bed. What? Mom started crying. Apparently, Victoria had stopped going to classes months earlier. Instead of studying, she spent most of her time partying, skipping exams, ignoring assignments, using the money my parents gave her for shopping trips and vacations. She had lied about everything. Every report card, every update, every tuition conversation. My parents had no idea until the university officially expelled her. And worse, most of the money was gone. Dad had spent years funding Victoria's perfect future, and she had blown through it like it was nothing. Mom's voice cracked. Your father is furious. I almost said something cruel. Something like, funny, he picked the better investment, didn't he? But I didn't. Instead, I just listened. Then Mom said, words I should have expected. Francis, could you come home this weekend? I frowned. Why? Another pause. Then, your father wants to discuss options. Options. I already knew what that meant. Still, I went. Part of me wanted to see it with my own eyes. The house looked the same. Same driveway. Same flowers. Same expensive porch lights. But inside, everything felt different. The air was heavy. Victoria sat on the couch with red eyes. Dad stood by the fireplace, pacing. Mom looked exhausted. No one smiled when I walked in. Dad got straight to the point. Victoria needs another chance. I crossed my arms. And he looked at me. We've had unexpected financial setbacks. There it was. I waited. Dad continued. Your scholarship covers your expenses. You also have that tutoring income. We thought. He paused. As if saying it out loud embarrassed him. We thought you might help your sister. I actually laughed. Not because it was funny. Because I couldn't believe it. You want me to pay for Victoria? Mom quickly jumped in. Just temporarily. Victoria sniffled. It's not a big deal. Not a big deal. The girl who got $260,000 was telling me it wasn't a big deal. I looked at Dad. The same man who once called me a bad investment. Now standing in front of me asking for money. I leaned forward. Do you remember what you wrote in that file? Dad froze. His face changed instantly. Mom looked confused. Victoria blinked. Dad's jaw tightened. I don't know what you mean. I looked him dead in the eye. Not recommended for long-term investment. Silence. Absolute silence. Mom's face went pale. Victoria looked between us. Dad stopped breathing for a second. He knew. He knew exactly what I had seen. Then I smiled. Small.
Cold.
And said words I had waited years to say. Looks like your investment strategy failed.
Victoria gasped.
Mom whispered my name. Dad's face turned red with anger. But for once, he had nothing to say. I stood up to leave. That should have been the end. But just as I reached the front door, Dad shouted something that made me stop in my tracks. I froze with my hand on the doorknob. Behind me, Dad's voice thundered across the room. If you walk out that door, don't ever come back. The house went silent. Mom gasped. Victoria looked up. And suddenly, I was 17 again.
Scared. Small.
Desperate for approval. For one tiny second, that old fear came rushing back. But then I remembered something. I wasn't that girl anymore. I slowly turned around. Dad stood there, breathing hard, his face red with anger. He expected me to break. He expected me to apologize. He expected the same Frances who spent years shrinking herself to survive in that house. Instead, I looked him straight in the eye and said quietly, "You already lost me years ago." Nobody moved. Mom started crying. Victoria stared like she'd never seen me before. Dad's mouth opened, but no words came out. I walked out, and this time, I didn't look back. That night, my phone exploded.
Calls.
Texts. Voicemails. Mostly from Mom. A few from Victoria. None from Dad. I ignored every single one. For the first time in my life, their family crisis wasn't my responsibility. And something strange happened after that. I felt free. Really free. Weeks passed. Then months. No contact. No guilt trips. No family dinners. No fake apologies. Nothing. And honestly, my life got better. Senior year became the busiest year of my life. I graduated top of my class, won a national academic award, got invited into a leadership fellowship, and then something unbelievable happened. A professor pulled me aside after class. "There's someone I want you to meet." That someone turned out to be Elena Brooks, founder of a fast-growing education technology company. She had read my research paper.
Not only that,
she wanted to fund my graduate work. I thought it was a joke. It wasn't. One meeting turned into mentorship. Mentorship turned into an internship. Internship turned into a full-time offer before I even graduated. While other students were job hunting, I was already building something bigger than I imagined. At 24, I became one of the youngest strategy directors in the company. At 26, I received stock options. At 27, the company announced plans to go public. That's when my quiet little life suddenly became very public. Business blogs started writing articles. My name appeared in interviews, photos online, conference stages, panels, LinkedIn features. Success had finally found me. Not because my parents believed in me, because I believed in myself when nobody else did. And then, after 4 years of silence, my phone lit up with a name I hadn't seen in a very long time.
Dad.
For years. No calls. No messages. No apologies. Just silence. And now, at the exact moment my name was starting to appear in business magazines, he suddenly remembered I existed. I almost didn't answer, but something made me swipe accept. "Hello." His voice came through slowly. Different. Heavier. Tired. Frances. Just hearing my name from him felt strange. Like it didn't belong in his mouth anymore. "I saw the article," he said. I stayed quiet. He continued. "About your promotion and the company going public." Still silence from me. Then he said it. The real reason for the call. I just wanted to say, "I'm proud of you." I almost laughed, but I didn't. Instead, I asked calmly, "Why now?" A pause. long enough that I could hear his breathing. Then, because I was wrong. Those words hit differently, not because they fixed anything, but because I knew how hard it was for him to say them. Still, it didn't erase anything. I leaned back in my chair. You were wrong a long time ago. Silence again. Then he spoke softer. Your mother misses you. That one landed differently. Not sharp, just heavy. I pictured her, the way she used to look at me when she thought I wasn't watching. But I didn't let myself sink into it. I know, I said. And Victoria, he asked carefully. That name. A pause. She's trying to rebuild her life, he added quickly. It's been hard for her too. I nodded even though he couldn't see me. Of course it had been hard. Life doesn't punish one person forever. But it also doesn't undo the past. I'm not angry anymore, I said finally, a relieved breath on the other end. But then I continued. I'm just not available the way I used to be. Silence. I could almost feel him trying to understand what that meant. I made it clearer. I have a life now, a career, a future. I can't step back into the version of me you left behind. He spoke quietly. So, what are we now? That question stayed in the air for a second. Family? Strangers? Something in between? I thought about it honestly. And then I answered. We're people who know each other's past. Another pause. Then he said something unexpected. I'd like to see you. I closed my eyes for a second. Not because I was sad. Because I knew that meeting would change things again. I'll think about it, I said. Not yes.
Not no.
Just truth. And then I hung up. For a long time, I just sat there. Not angry. Not emotional. Just still. Because the truth was simple now. I didn't need them anymore. But that didn't mean they didn't exist. And somewhere deep down, I knew the next time we met face to face, it wouldn't be like before. Not even close. Before we finish the story, if you felt every twist so far, make sure to subscribe for more stories like this. 2 weeks later, I agreed to meet them. Not at home. Not in that old living room filled with memories I no longer belonged to. We met at a quiet cafe in the city. Neutral ground. My choice. I arrived first. Sat by the window. Watched people pass by outside like nothing in the world had ever changed.
Then I saw them.
Dad first. Mom beside him. And Victoria behind them. For a moment, they just stood there unsure. Like they didn't know how to approach the version of me I had become. I stood up. No hesitation. No fear.
Just calm.
Dad stepped forward first. Francis. His voice broke a little on my name. Mom looked like she was holding back tears. Victoria didn't speak at first. She just stared at me like she was still trying to understand who I had become.
We sat down.
Silence filled the table. Then Dad spoke. I don't expect forgiveness. A pause. I just wanted you to know. I understand now. I looked at him. Really looked at him. No anger. No shaking hands. Just clarity. You understand what exactly? I asked. He swallowed hard. That I failed you. As a father. As a person. I chose wrong. I saw you as numbers, not my daughter. Mom started crying quietly. Victoria finally spoke. I was selfish, she said. I never asked about you. I just accepted everything. I listened. Didn't interrupt. Didn't react. Then I said something simple. You all made choices. The table went silent again. I continued. And I made mine. Dad nodded slowly. We know. I took a breath. I'm not here to rebuild what we had, I said honestly, because we never really had it. That truth landed heavy. Mom covered her mouth. Victoria looked down. Dad closed his eyes for a moment. But then I added, I'm here so we can stop pretending the past didn't happen. A long silence followed. Then Dad spoke quietly. Can we still be in your life? I thought about it. Not for seconds. For years. Everything. Every memory. Every broken moment. Every achievement built without them. And I answered honestly. Yes, but not the same way. They all looked up. I continued. I'm not your child to shape anymore. I'm not the investment you evaluate. I'm just me. And if you want me in your life, it has to be as I am now. Mom nodded through tears. Victoria whispered, I want that. Dad finally said, then we'll learn. I stood up slowly. The meeting wasn't emotional.
It wasn't dramatic.
It was something else. Final.
Real.
Peaceful in a strange way. At the door, I paused. Turned back one last time. They told me I wasn't worth the investment, I said softly. Dad flinched slightly. I continued, but I was never an investment. Then I looked at them all. I was a person who survived being underestimated. And I walked out. No anger. No revenge. Just closure. Months later, life didn't suddenly become perfect. But it became mine in a way it had never been before. My career grew. My boundaries stayed firm. My peace stayed protected. And sometimes I still met my family for coffee. Not as a broken family trying to fix everything, but as people learning how to exist without rewriting the past. And one night, sitting alone in my apartment, I finally understood something I spent years chasing. I never needed them to see my worth, because worth was never something they could give me or take away. It was something I built, something I lived, something I became. And that's how I stopped being their bad investment and became my own success story.